Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of Bolt Breakdowns here, Guilty as Charged Podcast YouTube channel. My name is Alex. As always, here to talk about a Chargers 31-14 win over the Las Vegas Raiders to get back in the win column and ultimately maintain pace in the AFC wildcard race with as the fifth seed over the Bills and Colts right now. So I think the tone for a lot of people coming into this game was, well, it's the 2-9 Raiders, right? And I think that's a completely fair criticism. I've talked about it myself. This was kind of their last gotta have it game, I think, compared to the others. Yes, they have to come up with some wins in their remaining games, but this was their last quote unquote easy matchup on paper, right? The Raiders have really struggled offensively. They fired their offensive coordinator. They have made a lot of in-season coaching staff moves. This is a team that you should put away fairly easily. And so I think what I want to talk about on this podcast is what I think I still need to see from the Chargers in these last 5 games, and also what I think they did today that is kind of transferable to these last remaining games here down the stretch against better teams. So we'll get into all of it. I think the place to start is the Justin Herbert injury. Justin Herbert is having surgery today in Los Angeles. He broke a bone in the back of his hand, per Jim Harbaugh. I don't know exactly what that would infer, and I don't want to completely rely on Dr. Jim Harbaugh. As he said, he's not a medical doctor in terms of giving out medical evaluations and player advice. But I would imagine he is talking about the metacarpal area here as the back of the hand, as opposed to what Justin Herbert broke in 2023, which was, okay, I didn't mean to flip off the camera. When Justin Herbert broke, obviously, his distal proximal interphalangeal, had a break there as opposed to the back of his hand. So a little bit of a different injury compared to the left non-throwing hand one. Obviously, that part of it is not confirmed. I'm just speculating based on what Harbaugh said and kind of the device he was wearing. I would say during the game when he came back, as opposed to wearing some sort of splint to protect a specific finger, I think he's probably talking about one of the metacarpal bones that would connect to distal finger joints. So I think it's less of a broken finger situation compared to the last one. But obviously we'll get confirmation and he'll do testing and surgery and stuff today. And we'll probably never find out what the exact injury was, but I think this is a little bit different than his 2023 non-throwing hand where he had the splint on the middle finger, like I said. Obviously, this changed a lot about the game plan for the Chargers. They basically, I don't remember them going under center for pretty much the remainder of the game. They had a couple weird sequences, I would say, when they got to the goal line and Herbert threw that pick to Caillou Blue-Kelly, where he was kind of trying to hand it off to Vidal to go right, but was trying to almost hand it off with like his right hand for him to go right, and Herbert admitted post game that when he hands the ball off to go right, he's handing it off with his left hand. When he's handing the ball to go left, he's handing it off with his right hand. So there were a couple weird exchanges with Vidal in that second quarter when Herbert came back. But overall, I think as the game went on, they figured out a lot of things just in terms of the shotgun snaps starting to feel more normal. Obviously, the big Vidal 59-yard run, I think, settled the team down a little bit offensively in terms of not needing to play from behind, in terms of not needing to play a super close game from that point going forward, with them being kind of in control. And we'll talk about game script, which I think is a huge thing. But obviously, this changes the equation for the Greg Roman offense going forward. The Greg Roman offense, a lot of it is under center. A lot of it is Justin Herbert snapping that ball, handing it off. You can have some play action designed off of it. Now you're not able to do probably a lot of that. I'm not saying they'll be able to go like 0 under center snaps against the Eagles, but obviously that takes some of your play action stuff off the table, and that probably takes off the 4th-and-1 tush-push situations, or power surge, as we say for the Chargers, off the table a little bit. There was that weird 4th-and-1 sequence where Harbaugh elected to go for it. Weird Harbaugh decision to go for it, too, for a coach who has been as conservative as he is, and I kill him on this week for being conservative, but I'm like, the one time to take the points probably would have been when your quarterback has a broken hand against the Raiders. But I understood going for it in that situation, although I didn't love the Kamani Vidal very obvious draw that the Raiders were selling out to stop. I kind of wish they had brought Trey Lance back into the game, do a QB sneak or do a tush push or something along those lines. But obviously, that was a play where I think without Herbert having the broken hand, they probably go tush push mode and pick up the first down. That was kind of just a mild example relative to the play action under center stuff that I think will change a little bit for the Chargers going forward. So obviously, as we get into Eagles week, we'll talk about kind of what they need to be able to do differently. But overall, this was a positive offensive performance considering the circumstances. Yes, obviously the Raiders' defense is not very good, but I think this game definitely had the chance after the Herbert hand injury to get away from the Chargers a little bit, especially with that touchdown the defense gave up before halftime. And luckily, the run game came through. Herbert picked up a couple clutch third downs, and we don't have any problems to worry about as far as a Raiders loss for certain. But as far as this Herbert injury, going back to that, Herbert, again, he said in the press conference that he's planning on playing against the Eagles, or he's treating it like he's playing, was the exact quote. So he's probably going to have some sort of hand stabilization surgery. I don't remember off the top of my head if he ended up having surgery for the non-throwing hand break in 2023 or if he just wore the splint. That escapes my mind at this moment, but this is obviously a break where they're going to put screws or pins to be determined today in that hand and have him have some mobilization, but also begin the recovery process, and then they'll probably have like screws or pins lifted out come off-season time, or when he has some downtime, depending on what the Chargers elect to do with this handbrake situation. Overall, definitely not the worst hand injury it could have been. The worst injury would be the throwing hand, but obviously this is going to be something, like I said, that changes Herbert's feel for the game. I think it's probably a little less annoying than the middle finger splint he had to wear in 2023, all things considered. That's more of a subjective take, though, depending on what Herbert's level of comfortability is in whatever contraption he's probably going to be wearing, maybe similar to the one he wore in the game today. The good thing is he throws the ball with his right hand, so it is not as bad as it could have been, all things considered, but not great that this is the third hand injury of Herbert's career, the non-throwing hand in 2023, the throwing hand at the end of 2023 against the Broncos, and then, of course, coming into this game. Now pretty much I think the third time he's broken his hand of some kind in his career. So you obviously don't want to see that happen, but in terms of how bad it could have been, I think this is definitely an injury that Herbert is capable of playing through. I think it'll just be about how can the Chargers protect that hand, and also how can the Chargers offensive line protect Herbert, but how can they run the offense kind of normally, and will it be as cool, calm, and collected as it was today, against some of the better teams? Probably not, but I definitely think them taking kind of the play-action shots off the table, that's something that Greg Roman and Justin Herbert will have to deal with probably going forward. But prayers to Justin. Hope his surgery goes well. It sounds like he's going to play against the Eagles, all things considered, and I don't think this injury is something that will prevent him from playing against the Eagles. We'll learn more as we go into the week. And I believe the Chargers, because they're playing Monday night, will practice on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So at the very least, he'll have kind of an extra day to get his bearings underneath him before having to play the Eagles on Monday night. But thought it was necessary to start the show off with that. Moving into this game now, specifically past the Herbert hand injury, the player of the game was Kamani Vidal. Obviously, I don't need to tell you that. You know that. But, yeah, I'll take another victory lap as I do on the podcast every other week with Kimani. He's now at 543 yards for the season. I think his third rushing touchdown. He's 4 total touchdowns. Nothing more that you can say than he has absolutely given this team immense breathing room that they did not have before. They were 3-2 when Marion Hampton got injured, and they went 5-2 in their next 7 games without him. Hampton presumably on track to come back next week and start to gain his RB1 snaps back. But even in my wildest imagination as a supporter of Kimani, and I never thought, oh my God, they cut Rocket Sanders. Oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. Because I thought Kimani was about a similar level of back, and I thought it was fine to have him on the practice squad. I thought people very much overreacted to a preseason offensive line that was a terrible blocking unit for the Chargers, all things considered. And, Rocket Sanders didn't do that great on inside runs either. He only did good on outside runs relative to Kimani, and Kimani was hurt in the preseason. So, to me, I was never as low as people were on Kimani coming out of the preseason. But I certainly didn't imagine him having 500, 600 yards in lieu of an Marion Hampton who would be out for 7 weeks. As far as what can you take from this game for Kimani going forward, this was the best after contact performance I think of his career. And yeah, you can blame some of that on shitty Raiders tackling, so on and so forth. But this is a Raiders run defense that is competitive. They are, I think, 13th in EPA per play. In addition to that, they gave the Chargers a lot of problems in week 2, even though the Chargers held off the Raiders pass rush quite a bit. Max Crosby gave them a lot of problems in the run game. That was, I think, the game Hampton had 8 for 24. I think the Chargers put up 81 yards total, and they averaged 3.1 yards per rush with Najee and Najee, Herbert, Haskins, and Hampton back then. So I definitely think Kimani having this kind of game and specifically getting a lot of his yards on kind of second chance runs he creates for himself, a lot of tackle breaking stuff like that shouldn't go understated, I think, here. Now, again, do I think we talk about kind of or Tyler talks about kind of the every other week thing with Kimani, and I definitely think on paper you are playing a better Eagles defensive line than this Raiders group for sure. But I do think there's a chance that they can run the ball pretty well against the Eagles, as we saw with the Bears this week. The Bears put up 280 yards on the Eagles from that Ben Johnson run game, which is a little bit more creative on paper than the Greg Roman run game. But I definitely think that opportunity, especially if they have Hampton back and kind of have that two-headed horse, maybe Hampton getting 12, 13 carries, maybe Kimani getting 6 or 7. I've always said that I don't intend to do the thing. I that's been a phrase of my speech that I've used forever that now has been ruined by that thing. Anyway, I think they can give Hampton back the majority of the carries, and then give Kimani a little bit of rest after he's been running the rock 25 times per game in these last couple of contests. So this is definitely a game where you can bring Hampton back into the fold, and I think have some moderate success against the Eagles. Like I said, they're giving up 280 yards on the ground. Their last 3 games, 160 yards. 160 yards in their last 3 games, 280 yards against Chicago, 120-something yards on the season. I think they're 23rd, 24th in total run defense right now. So this is a group that I think you can have some success on. I don't think it's going to be kind of that way every week, and it's going to be very game script dependent for the Chargers. If the Eagles go up 10-0 or 13-0, 14-0 very quickly on the defense, and it just turns into a Jags game script, then yeah, obviously you're not going to have a ton of success running the ball, whether Hampton is back or not. But I do think this game gives me some confidence that even with a good Eagles defensive line performance, that the running backs, both Vidal and Hampton, can create a little bit for themselves, even if they're not getting the best run blocking performance. And that to me is my lesson from today. Jarrett Patterson looked good. We'll see if he's on the roster, depending on if they have to bring Hampton back. So they'll have to play some 53-man roster games there. But I thought he looked good today. But yeah, nothing more that can be said that hasn't been said already about this Kimani performance. Breaks off the big 59-yard touchdown, and I imagine that felt great for him. And so, yeah, I think that this is someone that the Chargers have as their RB2 going forward. And certainly in an offseason where they have to address offensive line, they have to address defensive line, they have to figure out what the edge room is going to be. You basically now have a budget running back that's an exclusive rights free agent that you'll have to be able to get back on $961 million per year on an exclusive rights free agent deal because they cut him this offseason. And you'll get really cheap, really good running back 2 production for one more year. And then after that, I think he would be restricted free agent. And, we can talk about 2027 when the time comes to talk about 2027. But for at least the foreseeable future, the end of this year and next year, Kimani is going to be a big part of the Chargers' run game behind Amarian Hampton. And to me, that's what this game, as well as his performance this entire season, has locked down. And after getting cut, after going through all he went through in the preseason, truthfully, there's no one who deserves it more than him. And past Kimani, I just love seeing the stories of these guys across the league who end up earning these second chances, right, at making a roster. And most people who are cut off of a roster don't dream of having, kind of the performance that Vidal has opened this season, and the injuries opening the opportunity for him to kind of ball out. So shout out to Kamani in that regard. As far as the Justin Herbert part of this game, I know we kind of talked about only his injury. I thought he came up with a couple clutch third down throws, a few to Trey Harris, a few to Keenan Allen, where the defense still knows what's coming, but they can't stop it. I absolutely love whenever he throws it to Keenan Allen, and it's one of those third downs. I think he's at I forget what the exact number is, 22 or 23 third down conversions this year, which leads the league. If you had told me that before the season, even as much as I love Keenan and believe in Keenan, I kind of wouldn't have imagined that was the case. Ladd had a couple nice, conversions in this game as well. Aranda had a big one to put them on the doorstep of the goal line, but then they had a couple issues with handoffs, and then Herbert threw the pick. So overall, good day for him. QJ a little quiet today, but obviously had the big touchdown. And then Kamani got a little bit involved in the receiving game. So this was a game where they said, hey, if you're going to give us 200 yards on the ground, we're going to take 200 yards on the ground. And I ultimately don't mind that approach from them when it's working in this game script. Now, as far as the passing game, I am still a little bit worried about pass protection. I think that Jamari Salyer definitely played a little bit better today than I think the average performance that we had been getting out of a Deculus or a Penning or whoever was starting there. So that's good. He obviously had the run block that partially springed the Kimani touchdown. I thought he overall had a good performance today, but I still do have questions about when you go against a better defensive line that is not just Max Crosby trying to make plays for himself and try to open up plays for others, with what he's trying to do. When you go up against a defensive line that has more pass rushing talent, and probably an Eagles offensive line next week that's going to be pretty mad based off their results of this week, I still, that's an outlying question of how they're going to handle that on offense. And obviously, I guess the good thing about Herbert's hand injury is, from a pass protection standpoint, they'll probably get a lot more shotgun snaps where Herbert is not as easily pressured within a second or 2 seconds. Obviously, I still think sacks and pass protection will be a concern, but at the very least, if you're not running quite as much under center, that should help Herbert from a protection standpoint a little bit, just in that regard. But obviously, still a lot of offensive line questions to be asked after this game. Again, thought it was a good performance from Bradley Bozeman, decent enough performance from Mekhi Becton, who was not pulled off of the field today. Uh, per his own accounts and per his own words. Yeah, I thought Jamari played well. Pipkins had some troubles with Crosby for sure, but Crosby gives everybody troubles. I think I will take away kind of the Chargers' ability to keep control of a game when they are getting this kind of rushing performance and when Vidal and Hampton are creating some yards for themselves. I still have long-term questions, though, about the run blocking and the pass blocking in a game where the Chargers kind of fall behind a little bit, right? That I think from a schematic standpoint of Greg Roman bringing in Tucker Fisk, Greg Roman putting Trevor Penning there as an extra body today, that was great. We also kind of didn't see it against the Jaguars early, and once the Chargers got down 2 touchdowns, they basically couldn't afford to do a lot of that stuff because they needed 20, 30-yard chunk plays. So I still think the question of how the Chargers can play from behind with this current team without Alt Slater, that's still something to see going forward. But today was a positive, control the pace kind of game that I think will at least be somewhat replicable against some of the teams that will push them offensively less this season compared to some of the high octane offenses they play down the stretch. So to me, they showed that they can be competitive again on offense post Jags game, but again, still need to see much more. Did I have any other offensive notes? I think overall, a good day on offense, like I said. Questions about how everything will kind of run going forward, especially with the Herbert broken hand situation and the offensive line, I think, being better this game, but obviously going to play better defensive lines and better teams. But overall, fine performance considering the circumstances, and shout out to Kamani. Defense. Denzel Perriman leads the team with seven tackles, I think. Thule has a very good performance, 2 sacks. I think he had something like 3 run stops in the PFF charting as well. 1 PBU that he snuffed out an Ashton Genty screen. So this was probably one of the better games we've seen from Thule all season. He's had 10 sacks for the first time of his career with 5 games left to go. So shout out to him for how he's been playing. And I think you can poke holes in the argument about getting sacks against Geno Smith or getting sacks against this Raiders offensive line for sure, but I think this was a nice bounce back for both Thule and Mack, considering the bad taste in their mouths from the Jacksonville game and them only being able to get 7 pressures in that game. So this was a nice little bounce back effort for them, especially one that's needed now going into Eagles week in these last few games here. Mack, like I said, he becomes a little bit of a sack machine. I think PFF gave him credit for another sack. ESPN's charting only has him with the half sack here. I thought there was another one he got in on where it would have been like 1 sack instead of half a sack, but apparently only half a sack to this point. He had 2 QB hits though and 4 tackles. Boybe, I thought, had a nice little presence today. I think he ended up having a TFL. Blew up a play in the run game, which was nice. But I noticed him a couple times out there, which, again, compared to the defensive line having the non-show against Jacksonville, I thought, again, positive sign. Going forward, Taylor Tart, master PBU blocker, also came out again and dipped into his Kansas City bag. So he had a nice one on Geno Smith today. The secondary played great. Obviously, Dante Jackson, had that kind of play where he got the PBU and then had the tip drill. Cam Hart's probably not going to grade well because he did get beat by Brock Bowers a couple times. But I thought that was less on Cam Hart and more on just like Brock Bowers is a freak. Like that touchdown catch he had in the end zone. Not to glaze any Raiders for sure. But we all loved Bowers coming out of the draft, and when he makes plays like that, it's like, all right, like you know what, you can have that one. Definitely more stressful for that play to happen up 17 than a tie game or something. But Bowers, when he's on, man, crazy player. Trying to think if I'm missing anyone on defense. Derwin, I think, had a nice game. I think that Jesse Mentor definitely leaned more into his bag a little bit, where he brought in Derwin and Tarheeb, I think, on that 3rd and 9 blitz. That was a look that we didn't see like a ton of against Jacksonville, obviously considering the circumstances of that game. So it was nice to see, even if it being against the Raiders and it being easy, quote unquote, to get pressures against that line, that they took this game seriously. It's like, all right, let's throw some of our blitz packages, some of our exotic looks against this team and see what we can do going into this tougher stretch down the stretch of the season. Tony Jefferson came away with a pick today off of the tip drill, or the unk drill, as you can call it. So yeah, look, I thought everyone on defense overall played pretty well today. Couple miscommunications that I think are concerning. I think the first, was it Bowers? Yeah, Bowers, the first touchdown. It looked like there was a little bit of miscommunication on the back end there. That I think they were trying to kind of figure out who's supposed to be on Bowers. Was it Derwin? Was it somebody else on defense? So he ended up going wide open for a touchdown there. Again, in a game where they score 14 points, that's less of like a crazy criticism point. But we have seen some miscommunications through the whole year, so that was one that kind of like was a little interesting to me. But overall on defense, this was, like I said, a much better bounce back game that they were able to kind of take care of business with. So again, how much of this is transferable to playing this stretch of now a lot of really good quarterbacks, including Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Dak. You're going to get into kind of the ringer here against good quarterbacks, good offenses on paper. So how much can you take from this game going forward? From a defensive performance standpoint, probably not much, to be honest. But I thought the run fits were better today. Obviously, the secondary was pretty sticky in coverage as well. And you have to take that as some positive step, right? Obviously, the Raiders rushing today came up with 18 carries for 31 yards, 1.7 yards per attempt. So, hey, good on the Chargers. Again, I don't know how much of that I trust for the rest of the year, but it is a good sign going forward for sure. So that's sort of where we stand after this Raiders game. Oh, I want to talk about special teams real quick. Pretty disastrous start to the special teams game, where it was just like, they had the, I want to say the first, was it a Raiders punt return that went like 40 yards or something like? I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. No, Raiders. I think it was a Raiders kickoff return from Laubang. Who had the one that went up like near the 40? I'm trying to remember that off the top of my head. Someone had a kick return or like a punt return or something like that I remember started the game, and the Raiders got up like very close to the 40-yard line, and it was like, oh God, here we go again. And then I think after that, that's when Darius Davis also like muffed a punt, which was not great. And so you're just like, fuck, we had 2 weeks to prepare on special teams, and this is what we came up with a little bit. But after that, things definitely got a little bit better. I thought Darius Davis had some nice returns after that. He still looks just like, I don't know how to phrase this, slow, I guess, because again, he had productive returns today, and 30, bringing it out to the 30, bringing it out to the 35. Like, none of his returns outside of the muff punt were really that bad, but it still was just like, it feels like it takes a while for his gear to like get into a run fully when he's returning the ball. And like that was not something that I remember being as much of a problem in 2023, where he obviously was an all-pro level returner. Definitely went through some injuries the last 2 years that could have potentially changed his level of athleticism. So like that's something to watch. But to me, I would have been interested to see. I want to see more from Darius Davis. Today was obviously like a good game, but I do think that the way he was running was just like a little bit weird in terms of him not having the full array of athleticism that he once did. Dicker nails a 56-yarder. J.K. Scott didn't, get a ton of punts down today inside the 20, but overall I think had 2 punts for 115 yards. No Rick Lovato special team snaps to talk about now that Josh Harris is back, where, it looked like we led that with that on the podcast for a couple weeks. So when good old Eagles Super Bowl champion Rick Lovato was playing. But it was a much better special teams process operation-wise today than I think we had seen over the last month and in the last couple of months, to be honest. So, how much of that is transferable when they play better teams and cede yards, and return-wise to other teams? That I think is a question, but better second half performance today than how they started the game for sure. All right, I think that will do it. I have one final rant to get off my chest. There is no one who loses like the Las Vegas Raiders, who are eliminated in Week 14 again. There is no team in the AFC West that I respect less than the Las Vegas Raiders, because they're losers and their fans yap their gums all offseason about how it's going to be different, and how they have the QB and they had the head coach this time, and it's either racist John Gruden or it's dipshit Josh McDaniels. No matter who it is, they will be stuck in purgatory forever, God willing. They cannot find a quarterback or a head coach. And God, there's no other loser fan base that deserves it more, because I saw Raiders fans on fucking Twitter puffing their chests out when Max Crosby pushed Justin Herbert to the ground, and those two got into it. Oh, yeah, he gave Herbert a bitch fit. You just lost by 17. Have some self-respect. Have some self-retrospection. Have some decency for yourself, to not talk about, oh, I wish I was Max Crosby. I wish I could have pushed Justin Herbert. Just the worst loser fan base that will ever exist in the NFL history. And I truly hope that they all have, I hope they have a terrible draft. I hope they have a terrible offseason. I hope they have a terrible whatever. Run it back with Pete Carroll and whatever hotshot coordinator you want to bring back from college. And your little GM, Tom Brady. Ugh, disgusting piece of filth. Anyway, I wish nothing but the worst on Raiders fans. Fuck the Raiders. Family, trust, respect. Fuck Max Crosby. Fuck Tom Brady. Fuck their whole fan base. And there's nothing better than going 2-0 than the Las Vegas Raiders in a season. And, not to mention, I'm not done yet. The Raiders' last playoff win predates the creation of the BlackBerry. It predates the creation of the iPhone. It predates the second Bush administration, the second George W. Bush administration. It predates. I have more. Trust me, I have more. It predates Beyonce releasing her first studio album, Dangerously in Love. I could go on for more and more times and more things to talk about. But the Raiders fucking suck, and I hate them. Fuck the Raiders. Bolt the fuck up, and I'll see you on Monday night.